want to sit there and feel bad, that's it. Otherwise, get out there and work and make some money. And there's always a solution for you to build yourself, because the sense of independence is ingrained in the U.S. culture.
Well,
we're back.
We're back. So welcome everybody. I look personally very much forward to this presentation here, because I have seen Robert around for a long time, but we didn't talk so much. But we had a wonderful over the Skype session that we could have been talking forever a couple of weeks ago, right? And you guys, you know each other too, right?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Oh, that sounds dodgy.
Robert actually sent champagne over to my mother at a printing event and traumatized me for a few hours. Just saying.
Yeah, that's a Robert Godwin howdy for sure.
Yes.
So,
I was like, who's that guy? I was like, oh, it's Robert Godwin. I know him.
Mm-hmm. And Robert, you are right now in Chile.
Yes, I am. I am in Chile, and I can't look at the ocean from my office, but I have a balcony where I can, and I sit there at odd times of the day and simply watch the waves hit the shore. It's been, as we were mentioning earlier, that I've been kind of limited here in terms of travel because of the COVID, and it's more an issue of all the COVID everywhere else. We've loosened up everything here through very strict issues with lockdown, but it's paid off. So hopefully the rest of the world will catch on, and I'll be back on the travel mode again.
Hopefully.
So the Chile people can get rid of you. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So Morten, one of the reasons that I think I gravitate to Robert is because he's a lot like me, of course, in the sense that, I was just laughing that's why I gravitate to you, but it's actually true. If there's a room full of people talking about things, more than likely, Robert and I are pushing all of their buttons saying, okay, but what about the reality of the situation we're in and the future that we're all working to? For some reason, we find ourselves sometimes in these crowds of people who are very stuck with, this is the way we do things around here. This is our tradition for the last 460 years, and this is it, and it's not going to change. And we just need to keep doing what we're doing the best way and educate people on the value of print, instead of basically, looking at the model itself and seeing where the future really is. So I was really excited when I saw that Robert had slipped into the schedule because I think he's really a great person to talk about this, and he has a lot of experience in different areas of the industry that really help inform the opinions that I completely agree with mostly all the time.
Mm. Robert, that was not too bad of an introduction, right?
I'm almost turning red.
I thought it was your webcam, but okay. No, sorry, I couldn't help. I've been sitting here for 4.5 hours now, so now I'm getting into the moment where I should probably drink some red wine and just chill, right?
Yeah, perfect.
No, Robert, you're going. I mean, basically, when we spoke about you attending here, I think that maybe it's not 100% clear, but of course, when vendors and people who have a commercial interest in our project, they need to support us financially to get things going like this. And one of the first questions I asked you, because you have so many different hats on, right? So I was asking, okay, are you want to do this as a commercial project, then you have to pay, or is it because you want to share knowledge? And you said it's not a commercial thing. I want to share.
I've got some Chilean money here. Is that what you're asking for, Morten?
No, I'm not asking for money. I'm just trying to understand, because you work a little bit as a consultant. You work with RentAPress. You work with lots of different people in the industry, and you sent me also a presentation from some time back where you were presenting. I wouldn't say it was the same as today, but it was kind of anyway. But that was way before people in the industry started talking about Industry 4.0 and smart factory in broader terms anyway, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's. I think probably the best explanation for this is understanding what efficiencies can be brought to that. And that original presentation was for Idea Alliance in Arizona, and I'm going to say it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, I thought it was longer time. Okay, sorry, I thought it was older.
It's about 2017. About 2017. Well, it started in so let's say 4 or 5 years old. But the facility that I profiled, Print Fulfillment Services in Louisville, is actually owned by OpenSoft Development, Far Heap Solutions, and Brett Heap. And you've interviewed Brett Heap before. In fact, Scissorhands got mentioned in the prior thing, and I'm going to allude to Scissorhands because I'm not selling any software whatsoever.
But of course, I mean, Scissorhands is one of the most amazing software pieces I ever seen. Unfortunately, I don't see that used so many places. I don't know why, but maybe you know that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and there's certain things I'll talk about and others that I won't.
Okay, but you just sent out the scissors then, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my, this is going to be fun. This is the end of the day, obviously. So the smart factory itself ideas really comes from efficiencies that can be identified in the process. And to Deborah's point earlier about people doing things the same way, it's easier because people abhor change. They cannot stand it. And my role in the print industry, I came in as a change agent. I didn't really even know what a change agent was. I just kind of said things that made sense to me, and it just
like Deborah and me, I guess.
and so I found resistance in the oddest places, but I also found support in places I didn't even know about. Some of the salespeople, which were traditional transactional salespeople, extremely successful, pushed back because there were things they were used to selling. They didn't want their customers to know about it because the customers depended on them for knowledge. So salespeople as a source of knowledge, that's a big thing for me. But vendors, the salespeople as a source of knowledge is a big thing as well. And that's why I'll refer back to the last comment I made in the prior session, was that that's what trade shows should be doing. I really believe the vendors need to stand up, talk about what it is that they do, why they know that information, and why they're selling it to you because you could use it. Here's who's interested in using it. That's so simple. But to get to the point of the smart factory, it's the same process. It's like, why are we doing it this way? Isn't there a better way? With the advance of technology and frankly, the ease of using it with different coding languages, there's a lot of things that can be done. And Diego made some really good points about that, saying that it just needs to be there. He made one really strong point, because I'm going to say things that's eventually that get to that sound like they're conflicting with what he's doing or what he's talking about. but it's not really. He was configuring existing software, and he made that point. I'm not a developer. What he does is he looks at what kinds of efficiencies can be brought with a given technology. And in this case, he was using he wasn't using Dalim. He was using Switch and Focus and all that. There, you configure those. Dalim, you configure them for your workflow. That's great. That's where the configuring should take place. But there's so many other technologies that exist, and people take different approaches to it. And one of the things that was brought up was the expense. Mm. So all those different factors really come into play. What can you afford to do? What can you afford not to do? There's an opportunity cost that comes into play when you're working with software that really puts you in a position of saying, well, I don't really want to spend the money on that because, my monthly numbers won't look so great, or I really want to get a new press. And I don't mean to pick on people who want to buy a press and people who want to stand in front of the new press, because that really impresses people. It's a big piece of equipment. And I think that's lost on some people to understand that that's a major expense for them and a major commitment to buy a press. But most presses in most shops have existing capacity. And to answer one of your unasked questions, RentAPress, as I've said before many times, we don't own any presses, and I don't intention to do that. I buy into existing capacity because there's so much of it and it's so easy to do. So I'm kind of a no-cost sales tool, sales channel for the printers that exist out there with a lot of capacity. I have to say that somebody who has a $10 million invested in iron on the floor, if they're not running 3 shifts, I think they're crazy. I think they're out of their minds. And if they don't have the sales channels to feed that press what it can do, that beast that they have, then I don't understand how they've made that purchase. There's a lot of issues that I could bring up around that.
But that is true and not true, because to challenge you a little bit on this one, it's like, I think the biggest issue, and Deborah raised it in the first session, kind of, because if you have a press, let's say you have a $10 million press, for example, or maybe a $5 million press.
A 10-color perfector. We'll start there.
Yeah, let's start there. I'm just saying that maybe it's the business idea and the number of applications and customers and the markets you want to target that is the first question to get into. Because, there's a lot of people that own presses that makes a lot of money. Of course, they're also more fragile than you are. But and I totally agree with you on the oil capacity. I'm just saying that the problem is, I don't know how it's in the US, but I know from my own region of the world that sometimes people went to Heidelberg or KBA or whoever, and then they saw this fantastic huge machine and perfection and dispersion varnish and LED UV, and you know it, right? And then it was just like they bought it because of that, not because of any ideas of product and markets and customers and things like that. And I think that is where things are changing a little bit right now. Or you totally disagree with me, Robert? Yeah. Why not?
Well, not really. I understand that there are facilities. There's clients. Let's start with a client. There's clients that require to take over the press. They want to own the shop when they come in. And I'm going to provide 2 examples of it. If you're doing work for Unilever and you're printing their packaging, they're gonna own the shop for while that run is there. Period. That's it. So 100%. They pay the price for that. That's it. The same thing with the movie studios, where I do have a lot of experience. They pay for that access to say, I'm just going to do this. We had one client. I can't really say what the name of it was, but their initials were Apple Computer, and everything they did with their packaging, we did a small portion of it. We did their outdoor, but the outdoor campaigns were tied to everything that was secret. We actually had to shroud the press that it was being run on, so nobody could see it. All of the computers if they were making adjustments to the native file, were off network, and we had to use their hard drive to pull their stuff in. And then when they came in, their technician wiped our machine, and that was it. And so they complete security on it, and frankly, it worked. It wasn't that it didn't work; it's what they wanted, it's what they did, and they paid the bill for it. That was with the original Chiat Day, which is now TBWA or Media Arts Lab, I think.
TBWA.
TBWA, sorry. That they have that kind of control over what they're doing. Yes, those facilities will make money. And there is still that kind of work. But as I talk about, as we get through the presentation and all of that, as I talk about it, that's niche. That is not the market.
No, but Robert, in order to have an overcapacity, somebody needs to take the investment. That's what I'm saying. So basically, I'm just saying that you're totally right. But at some point, if you don't have people that do the investments in hardware, you cannot have an overcapacity that you can utilize, right?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah. So
yeah, well, that's why I said I partially agree with you, because you have to segment the market based on who you're servicing. And that's true in every business market. It's true for doctors. There's a general practitioner and there's the brain surgeon.
Should be a difference, hopefully.
You would hope.
Yeah. So I am doing your brain surgery. Yesterday I did some nails and some old woman. No, kidding. Sorry. Before we get on, because I know you can talk forever, Deborah. When you think about Robert as an influencer in the industry, because when I spoke to Robert, he is, he's in the Crown Pub in the UK. He is probably also on some print chat from time to time, and
Always
he
on
is,
print chat.
yeah. So how do you see Robert in that perspective?
He's a disruptor, which is why I love him. He constantly challenges the status quo. He constantly says why, and I love people who say why. He consistently helps people realize that there might be a different way. I'm not saying a better way. I'm saying a different way. There are a lot of people who are stuck in their ways, whether they're the best way or not. I don't think anyone can ever really assess that unless they look at all the opportunities. So that's really why I gravitate to Robert. I think we support each other in a lot of those conversations. That somebody does need, to be pushed, and I can only push with certain things because I'm not a printer. I don't have the experience. I can't speak of it from a print shop. I can only speak of it from a print customer and from the market. But Robert can, and I can tag team with that and, help somebody see that there might be another way to utilize that press for more opportunities, another way to utilize automation to bring in more work that in verticals or from customers that you're not typically don't go after, and to accept the fact that your monthly nut, so to speak, is probably now going to have to be comprised of a lot of little jobs and not a few big jobs like the printers or some of the printers that Robert and I encounter are used to. And they don't like hearing stuff like that and think that they can come up with systems and conversations to push print volume. But I think Robert and I agree that that's not the way the world is anymore. There are those few and far between Unilever customers and Apple and things like that, but everything else is made up of lots and lots and lots of small run print jobs. So a long way of saying that we're on the same side a lot of times in these conversations.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Robert, I would like you to take the presentation and the stage and carry it on. I will be listening all the time. And there are not so many people live right now, but we will compensate for that in the replays, I guarantee. And sure. Take it away. I look very much forward. And then after your presentations, I hope there's questions from the audience, or I have prepared a few. So take it away.
Okay, I need to share my screen, and I think I can do that right here.
Yep.
And I'm going to do this one, and let's make it full screen. Oh, come on.
Oh, there we are. I can see your screen coming up now.
Okay.
Still white, but I can see your mouse moving or the pointer.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out why I do not have. It's trying to make it come on. Okay, this is.
Do you have it? Do you have any?
I have dual monitors, so I don't know.
Yeah, but do you have any animations or anything like that in your presentation?
Huh. Let me try it again. Hang on. I think it may be because I'm on a dual monitor here.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't like the dual monitor. Let me just turn it off, and I'll bring it up on this screen.
Otherwise, you can just click on the slides here. We have uploaded it, so in case you just
Yeah,
want to,
if you could do that, that'd be great. Why
yeah,
don't you do that?
I just have it here, and now you can just control it yourself from the menus in the right side.
On the right side. So I am looking at.
Go back to the browser.
I am looking at the browser, and where do I see the control? Videos, files.
No,
Robert,
slides.
look underneath. It
Slides.
says
Got it.
next. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, I've got it on there. Okay, so you should be seeing workflow automation. And I'm not going to. With me, it's not an issue of reading the slides, so they'll be there for your reference as we go through this. Essentially, what I do is talk about what the subject matter essentially is. But for the title of this, we're going to discuss the strategy, the technology, and the philosophy that's involved with it. And this is an extremely important point that I want to make about this. For every printer that's out there, don't think of your work as a commodity, as the manufactured piece is the commodity, and drop the price to get people interested in it. That's not why they're interested in it. It has a marketing value to them. And the ability to be able to sell it to them are based on the simple things that you do when you go to a particular store. There's no difference in the business dynamic for that. If you go to a grocery store because they have what you want in stock, because what they have in stock is acceptable quality for you, and then you basically will go there and purchase from them. It's very simple. And so you need to make the manufacturing the commodity in your thought sets, not the product itself. That's what the smart factory is about, is turning the manufacturing process into the commodity. And it's critical that you become as efficient as you can possibly be. And all of the factors that are involved in the workflow process, the technologies that manufacturers provide now do a lot of the black box magic that used to be part of the industry and part and parcel with a given shop or a given person who had the skills to make your files look really great. That isn't essential any longer. Most of that is in the technology that you have with your pre-flighting capabilities to make sure the file is appropriate, with the proofing abilities and things. So use the technology that's there for you. In using the right tools for the job, yes, it's something that seems so terribly obvious for what's that, but choosing the right one is really a big deal, because there's a lot of tools that work really, really well, and some may be better for you. And the obvious criteria for that is, do you understand how the technology itself works? Can you afford that particular technology? Does it have features and capabilities that you can actually use? And I think that just about every aspect of print production is covered by some manufacturer offering, not manufacturer, but developer, software provider that has a tool that can do that particular function. Getting them all to work together is a challenge, and I'll address some of that later on. But I think that, again, looking at this, and I get towards the end of the presentation, we'll talk about this, too much automation can create a very brittle solution, meaning that you can create efficiencies like crazy, but then if a change comes along, you don't know what else it's going to affect in the workflow. So too much automation can also be your enemy, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. But all of it really matters for that. And on the right side of your screen, I think that you can see that some of the calculus that's in there that's required to understand exactly what's going on with it. A lot of the technologies that exist have already done this kind of work, and you just select what it is that you need to do. You simply put that information into a text field, and it will then be there. That's your substrates, that's the cost of per sheet, that's the devices that you have, and a lot of the technologies will speak to those devices. So a lot of that work is completely done. But where the benefit, the real benefit that I found and was extremely impressed by, was the issue of gamification. Because once you've automated to that degree and are sharing the data from all the different workstations and work nodes, if you will, in the workflow, then you can start to work with your employees and increase their productivity per employee. And there's several benefits to that. And this is going to be a little bit harsh for people who understand that they kind of have a family, sometimes literally, that work for them. There's people that they've known that have been for years. There's going to be a reduction in labor, because labor is one of the most expensive components on a daily basis that you have. And of all the factors that come into it, there's great things about loyal employees. There's better things about employees that have a job. And a successful business needs to be efficient and competitive. And helping your employees understand that through gamification is one of the ways that you can empower them. But you can do a lot more with a smart factory setup and efficient setup with employees who can do these kinds of things. Okay. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I've spoken a lot with the people at Cimpress. Again, this goes back a couple of years, but they were looking for different ways to, for the facilities that they were buying, the plants that they were buying, looking at efficient ways to manage things. And I invited them to come in and take a look at one of the facilities that I mentioned earlier, fulfillment services, where a lot of the technologies had been put into play 5 or 6 years ago. And they were at a mature point where the benefits were known. We had data to prove their efficiency and the benefits that existed with it. And this is the differentiation between shops that are set up for custom fabrication, where you need to have very specific processes in place for a specific client's needs. That is something that the client must be charged for you to be able to narrow your interests in something like that. It's a Formula One racer has a car that will go around a racetrack with a lot of turns in it very, very quickly and handle very well, stop very quickly, accelerate very quickly. But it would be a horrible car to drive in Los Angeles traffic. Okay, you want an automatic transmission, and you want some comfort that doesn't exist in it. So there's the right tool for the job concept there. Mass customization, which is something that Cimpress has been marketing like crazy as their philosophy and their concept, uses the technologies to be able to say, we can do a ton of different things. We can produce a ton of different products, and we can have a user experience that makes it very easy for you to be able to touch and do, create, and manage all of these different products. And that's two different concepts. One product is extremely complex and requires a lot of engineering skills, a lot of subjective analysis skills. And the other one is, I need this, how can I make it? And they're very different for the skill sets that are required. One is a high margin, and the other one is a very small market. The other one in the mass customization is huge, especially in some place like the United States, but really truthfully throughout the world. It's just the needs of the small business people really dwarf the needs of large businesses. It may sound ridiculous when you sound how much a large company will pay for a particular press run, but when you look at the volume of that, I'm small. RentAPress is extremely small. 1 million business cards minimum a year, 2 million actually, as you go forward. And other companies that are much larger and produce much more are hundreds of millions. Those business cards go to small companies. That's who's driving the industry. That's where the market is. That's where you can compete successfully. And so, a lot of it's a sales thing. So technology in those kinds of things, to be able to give a competitive product, both in terms of quality and price, technology is your resource to be able to make that happen. So which playground is for you? This is an interesting concept. Essentially, automation belongs in every single workflow, and there's certain stages. Smart companies choose automation where they need it, and that's discretion. That's understanding your workflow, where your bottlenecks are, and choosing, again, the right solution for that. And interviewing the vendors with that, talking about what it is that you need to do, and seeing how it is that they would solve it, and then getting a total cost estimate from them on what it's going to be. That's both the initial installation and then moving forward with it. But automation belongs in most all workflows. But where and how much, those are the issues. Remember, I'm going to say it a couple of times, too much automation can actually create a very brittle situation. And what I mean by brittle is that you've got something that if you change it, you have no idea how it's going to affect things further down the line. And I'm going to talk about the big picture of automation as we get to this, a build to it. So your flexibility essentially is limited the more you automate it. I know that you can see that there's things that you can change, but when you start changing your workflow, you start bringing up issues that might be very difficult for you to manage. So anticipating what's going to be happening with the orders that are coming in and the type of work that you accept is really a large issue of that you need to address as to, what kind of market you're serving. If you're doing the same thing all the time, if the same customer comes in and orders, ham and eggs and hash browns in the morning, and they want the hash browns done, well done, you know what to do. You see them walk through the door, you produce it, and you put it in front of them, and everybody's happy. But printing doesn't work that way. Printing in both ends of the spectrum, from the very high end to the lower end, is custom fabrication to an extent. What you're doing to create that custom fabrication depends on the customer. And we're going to kind of get into that. But the infographic I put in there, I've tried to limit the infographics because, frankly, sometimes I'm a very visual person. Sometimes they confuse me as to what's being said here. But there's really just 4 basic steps in what you're doing. You create the order. That's usually the customer that's doing it, especially in a web to print circumstance. And then there's prioritization and optimization. I'll talk about that. I'm going to say not at the 10,000 foot level, but maybe the 2,500 foot level, to where you can actually see what's going on. And then some manufacturing choices, the selection of the press, where it's going to be done, whether the run's long enough to be more beneficial on litho, or whether it's better simply to run it on digital, both in terms of turnaround, cost per sheet, all that kind of stuff. And then automation in the bindery and in the shipping. And shipping is something I'm going to talk about actually more than you ever wanted to hear. But it's important, because if you weren't aware of it, shipping logistics are a profit opportunity for printers. Most of the web to print places, every Amazon purchase that you make, shipping is part of their profitability. And in some cases, like used books on Amazon, that's where they make their profit, is shipping that to you. It's also where their expense is. Okay, so 3-stage. I think the strategy in doing this is really important. One, I'm going to talk about something called queuing and aggregation. And this is the print short, ship long. Let me explain this. This is where you can make money on logistics. If you pay the list price to ship something with any major shipper, so I'll name the 3 major ones that I know about: DHL, FedEx, and UPS, United Parcel Service. If I go in and I say, I want to ship this package as an individual, it's going to cost me $10 to ship it. However, if I ship 1,000 packages a day, I get what's called negotiated prices. So I can ship that same package for $5. But what I'm going to charge my customer is $7.50. Now, is that fair? Yes, it is. I make 50% markup, which is profit for me. And my customer is getting it at 75% of their cost. So it's a win-win situation. I make money, and they need me to make money for them to be able to get that shipping less expensive. So a lot of people say, oh, if you cut your costs, you have to pass it on to the customer. Well, I just did. I gave it to you for $7.50, and that's a good deal. So those are the kinds of things that printers have to get past to understand. In many cases, they think that those are areas that they should cut. Those are areas that they should profit from. And automation can help you do that. It's not just in terms of volume, but in terms of how you use the logistics to be able to do that. So you're prioritizing the print part of getting something done over the shipping stage. A lot of printers schedule themselves based on when the job is due. So they look at what the press time is. Oh, we've fit this job in here. We've got 3 days to do it. We'll print it later. And then they're stuck with the most expensive printing option. If you print early, somebody who says, okay, it takes, let's see, you put on your website, it takes 3 days to print something. Okay, so I should expect that if I order it on Monday, I'm actually going to receive it by Friday. All right, by the time everything is said and done. But if I receive that order on Monday by noon, maybe I can print it that night and ship it ground. So they may have paid for expedited servicing because they expected that job would be done on Thursday, and they shipped it overnight. I can actually ship it for maybe $2 or $3, and they've paid $15 for it. I can make money that way. Is that fair? Well, the issue is that if I have trouble with that job, my responsibility, I've got more time for me to be able to fix it, so that I am taking that time that I say that the turnaround is there. And it also assumes I have the press time to be able to get that job in time. But when I can, I'm going to take advantage of it. That's commoditizing your manufacturing, not commoditizing what you deliver to the client. The client says, I'm willing to pay this much money to get it on Friday. They've made the deal. And then you just simply have to deliver it. And it damn well better be there by Friday. So even if you have troubles and stuff, you may end up paying a premium cost to get it to them by Friday, but you've got a satisfied customer either way. Try to be profitable, run a stage that does that. That's really important. So next stage, your user experience. If you're doing web to print, this is huge. Now, if you compare user experience to the printer, the high-end printer who has a wonderful lobby and an absolutely skilled, human-oriented reception person that's coming in to be able to greet the person, make sure that they have coffee. They go and they sit in the lounge and they are comfortable. They have internet access and they have a comfortable chair to be in, and they can work and get things done while they're waiting for the press to be ready and all of that kind of thing. Think of that as the same thing when you're doing a user experience. So that when you're online and going to a website, it's got to be easy to use. It has to be something that doesn't confuse the people as they're going through. I have issues personally when I try to check out of someplace and I am upsold at every stage. It's much like the candy bars and stupid magazines that they have at the checkout. It's an impulse buy that you might want to do. Oh, I can buy a little package to put them in. Oh, I can add extra trim. Oh, if I buy 50 more cards, I can get it for this. Whatever the case is, the upsell kind of bothers me, but in a retail environment, those are opportunities to sell. So I don't disagree with them. I personally don't like them. But whatever it is that you do in that user experience, it's got to be easy. It's got to say, this is really easy. Hey, I bought something extra when I checked out and it turned out to be a really great deal. That's great customer experience. Listen to the voice of the customer. But the issue with web to print, and I think several of the people have talked about how web to print is essential for printers to survive in today's market, at least the printers that we know, the smaller shops. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. One, you keep your high-end work and you set up a separate business, but you run it all through the same manufacturing facility as to where it goes. It's a little more sophisticated setup that you have to deal with, but business is business. So one of the ways to do is to manage that when you do the file upload is to have template-based design. And that way they can pick up something and they can conform it to that particular design. Yeah. And I do get excited when I talk. And if I'm talking too fast, just put it in the chat and I'll slow down. But when you're working with these kinds of things, it really helps for the different levels of users that you have to have a set template. Now, there's two levels of this. One, there's the retail environment where the templates are suggestions on how you want to do it. Do you want a greeting card? Do you want your business card to look like this? Are you in the landscaping business? Are you a barber, hairstylist, a doctor, skincare, window cleaner, whatever the case might be? It would help to have maybe 10 or 15 different templates for you to be able to select and then build it off of that. But of course, the risk with that is that there could be 10 other people using the same template. But those are factors that could come into play. For the branded solution, where you've set up a private portal, still web to print, for a given client, let's say it's a real estate company with 22 offices, and they're in 22 different cities, and you want them to be able to order their products so that a new salesperson comes in, or that salesperson, a real estate agent, needs new cards. They're ordering off of a template to guarantee that the font is correct, that they're using the right layout and design, that the branding is all in place, and that the costs are controlled because they're not ordering something super fancy. Those are things that can be done with that. So that same user experience is important in that environment where there's the more knowledgeable buyer and perhaps slightly more driven, and the retail buyer who may need suggestions to be able to understand what it is that they're going to produce. But that's critical. Now, there's a benefit to the templates that helps a smart workflow. Once you've conformed that file to a template, you know that it's going to run through your system smoothly. And so the pre-flighting becomes less of a challenge. If you're just getting files straight uploaded, you have to make sure that they're going to conform, and your pre-flighting becomes geometrically or exponentially more complex to be able to make sure that the bleeds are correct, that the resolution is correct in each of the files, and a variety of different things. But once that's done and the pre-flighting is there, most of the things that you get can then be set to make sure that they will print. And that's the benefit of that technology. Again, technology is working for it. So as you analyze and queue them for manufacture, This is going to inform your imposition. I'm going to talk about this, and this gets a little complicated. Once you've done that, you can do gang run imposition. Now, a lot of people, gang run was always looked at as, oh, this is the low end thing. There's a carryover. What's running in front of my, what's the color running in front of my piece on the gang sheet? Is there going to be color run over? Am I going to get a tint on my gray background? All these kinds of factors that were there. Especially for the short run in digital, that's simply not an issue. And I think that those are things that are old school thinking. Gang runs are now possible. The technology on presses, both litho and digital, is outstanding. If you have critical need for color control, you're a different customer. You must go to a high-end shop. And if you're really critical about it, you're going to stand on press and do what's called a contract, a sign-off on a press sheet in the run. They run it through it, you make adjustments, you get the one you like, and you physically sign it that that's what you want it to look like. And then they run their tightly controlled press to get it as close as they can with it, with frankly very little variance in between. There's always some variance on a litho press. There's variance on a digital press, slightly less, but you're running fewer sheets. So that's the issue. So there's different ways to impose. And a good imposition system has either all or some of these available to you to be able to do it. So there's the template. This is simple, not flexible, and it's by product type. All your business cards go on that template. So it's by product category. And then there's dynamic. This takes what's available and imposes it the best it can on the sheet. And usually what that's after is to save real estate. So you're using your paper and your substrate efficiently, and you're not having a lot of waste in what you're doing, the trims that come off of it. Then there's the hybrid. There's half template and half dynamic. You know that you have enough, let's just say business cards, because there's often so many of them, of one type of product. That goes into that template. But the other half of the sheet is whatever's available, and it's laid out the best way it can be. Then there's rules-based, and it looks for specific attributes of orders. This one's probably the one that can save you the most money. So it's going to look, are the substrates the same? So this category of sheet is what, excuse me. This category of product is the one that I'm going to look for, because that I can put onto it. So anything that fits onto that's going to be printed on that sheet, that's one thing. Then what size is it best? Is it going to get spot varnished on it? Is there any other special effects? Is there embellishment that needs to happen with the print? And it will recategorize and organize it so that that sheet is the most cost-effective way to produce it. And that'll do that. There is software. It's called Imposer. And the Imposer software will actually go through and reconfigure that sheet until it's press time, so that it's constantly doing it, because there may be another order that comes in. If that sheet's due to run, let's say you have to run it by 8 o'clock that night for whatever reason, it will configure the sheet based on the orders available in the system right up to the last minute. And then you push the button and you've got the most efficient configuration on the sheet. That's very sophisticated work. It depends on your workflow to be able to do that, but a templated design tool will help you be able to do that kind of thing, because you know everything about the product. And then there's manual, of course, and manual is the most efficient for real estate on the sheet, and for any issues maybe with carryover or other, making it work on the cutter really easily and things of that nature. It takes high skill and it takes a lot of time. It's the most expensive way to impose things. Spend a lot of time on that, because this is the start of where you're going to get efficiencies in a system. Now, cutting the sheets. Now, in the prior discussion that was going on, workshop or presentation that was going on, Diego mentioned Scissor Hands. It's a product I'm very familiar with. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you my story. I was doing a demonstration, and this was for the Simpress people. And we took somebody who was from the finance department, never actually been on the shop floor before, other than just walking through. And we walked them up to the cutter and told them what to do, and they cut their first job. It's very similar to the story that Diego told. But my personal story is, I went up to that cutter. I'd never used one before, and I cut a sheet that had 8 different jobs with 8 different products on it in 15 minutes, boxed and labeled at the cutter. Now, that's efficient if I can do that. I mean, I'm setting you up for the gamification part of this in terms of what technology can do in terms of creating efficiencies and the kind of labor that you need to hire that can be very effective win-win situation. So an automated guillotine. What an automated guillotine does is, and there's several products out there. There's the scissor hands that was discussed, microcut. I think it's from Coulter Peterson. I may be wrong on that, but there's a lot of automated technology for guillotines. Now, all that work that was done in the imposition of the sheet is then passed down to the cutter. It's something called the JDF cut block. That's where JDF that definition and then information about how the sheet was imposed is really important, because that information, whether it's JDF or an XML component, either way, it's describing what's on the sheet. Now, with something like scissor hands or any of the other sophisticated imposition tools, it will look at that sheet and it will tell you what to do. And the biggest thing with a cutter, one, are the turns, and then the back gauge adjustment as to where it needs to be to line up for it. And when you can start to automate that, you can cut your bindery as far as the cutter time to about 1/10 of what it would take a very skilled journeyman to be able to produce that cut. That's huge. It reduces errors. But the other thing that you can do from that imposition is the packaging intent. If you know that you're going to have business cards and greeting cards and flyers and brochures on a sheet, then you can understand what the kind of packing is. Now, what this does is that it allows you to understand, if it's being boxed already, that you're in a position to then determine what the best shipping method is. So that if you're shipping cross-country, you can do something called less than load. That's hiring a truck, but not packing it completely full, so that you're actually just kind of renting a portion of the truck to get something somewhere. That costs less than renting the entire truck to get something done with logistics companies. And then also do something called zone skipping. That means if you can put everything, and I'm doing just an extremely simple description of it, with the same range of zip codes in the United States, that's the postal code that would be shipped to, in a certain area, and they have the criteria for that with the logistics companies, you can then pack all those together, and they'll just put it on a truck that's going straight to that zone. That saves you money. Again, the logistics are an opportunity through automation and smart workflow to make it a profit point, not just an expense. I'm banging this drum a lot, but you've got to squeeze every drop out of the stone that you can if you want to survive. All right. Gamification. I'm going to take a drink on this. It's water. All right. Gamification. For those of you who don't know what it is, I'm going to give again my very simple for it. Simple explanation for it. And if you look at the image that I put in there, it's essentially the reward of it is increased pay. I'll just jump to the punchline. But learning is a huge part of it, and the automation allows forecasting of when work will be available to perform. Morton knows this. I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to tell you a story. I was at a large company's plant. Is that okay, Morton? Can I tell a quick story?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. A quick story. I was at a facility that I was considering sending some work to, because they had a couple of special things. They were geographically desirable, so it reduced my shipping cost, so I could send them work in a particular area, blah, blah, blah. So I toured their facility. They're very proud of it. I'm going to say they had virtually every piece of equipment a large print shop could own, okay? From the newest digital press to 4 40-inch presses, a full bindery department, all the folders, all the sorting that you would need for direct mail and for fulfillment. I mean, they really had, the full soup to nuts situation. I went through the facility and I'm looking around and I'm standing here at one end of the facility. I'm looking across the facility and I see 4 people standing around talking to each other. And they're wearing the little coats they make them wear, the lab coats and stuff. And so I asked the guy, I said, what's that department over there? He goes, oh, that's the bindery. As soon as we get this job printed and put on a pallet and the forklift guy takes it over there and stuff, they're going to be so busy. I stopped listening at that point. That you would have people standing around. And so I'll just say it right now. I'm forecasting what I'm talking about. Why weren't those people over there palletizing the stuff, driving the forklift, and then doing whatever cutting or bindery stuff that they needed to do, instead of standing there waiting for the work to come to them? I'll probably mention this 3 or 4 other times. It's so inefficient, and that's so old style to set up the workflow that way. So gamification requires cross-training. You have to know how to do different types of things, and they need to be certified to do that. I'll use the forklift as the best example of it. Forklifts are death traps for people. If you pick up a pallet wrong and it falls over, you could really damage some equipment, some people, whatever, or drive those forks into something. You have to know how to drive a forklift. And I'll tell you, it's a work of art. I've seen some of the best people. I can't believe what they do. They are delicate. They can pick stuff up. They can nuance things. It's wonderful. But you've got to be certified. You've got to be trained before you can do that. So if you want people to take on different skills, you have to have a training program for your employees so they can certify themselves to do these different skills. Quite frankly, if someplace does direct mail, you have to have them certified, go through training for the postal, handling certain postal kinds of things to understand it. So it's not a foreign concept to do that. You don't want to put somebody on, someplace that does direct mail and not have them understand the difference between a nonprofit and first-class mail, okay? It's a big deal. So cross-training is really important. Now, what that allows you to do, because in a workflow, is you can anticipate when something's going to be someplace. So ultimately, I know that there's going to be work happening at a given hour. So what happens is, for that employee to make money, is they say, okay, on my device, let's go to the next slide. I think I have it here. I don't. I'll have to go back to it and do it. So I'm going to go back to my previous slide. Sorry. Ultimately, what happens, and I've seen this, the employees will run to the next task to get the job. And I'm going to talk about how they know how to do that and some of the other factors. Because if they do that, and the different jobs have different point awards. Running a forklift is important, but it's not quite as important as running the running the cutter. And it's certainly not as important as managing 5 indigo presses, which one person can do, by the way. You can manage 5 of them and make sure that there's paper in the drawer that needs to be there for when it's being printed, pull out the other paper, and manage all of that. And automation allows you to do that. So it can signal them as to when the work needs to be done in the place where it needs to be done. And they have different levels of it. So the more certification they have, the more places they can work when work's available. And they go and they do it. That also means you don't have to have people standing around waiting for the work to come to them. God, I hate that. Okay. If the tasks are completed, the employee can log out. They do that because they are notified. And I have a picture of this device that they get notified on in this one facility. You could use something as simple as a pager. Their phone works great. To be able to do that, they get a text message that says, this task is available, but not for 3 hours because of things that need to be done to it. You're certified to do that. Do you want to do the work? You confirm that you are. And then you go and you go do grocery shopping. You go pick up your car at the car mechanic. Pick up your kid at school. It's a lifestyle thing that's important to people. Flexible hours, when they can be managed properly, help an employee live a decent life. They have to get used to it. They don't have to be standing there the entire time with the little coat on saying, I'm ready to work, I'm ready to work, I'm ready to work. Okay. And essentially this practice in 2 facilities that I know of, but in the one that I'm intimate with where I saw the data, it's eliminated the overtime. There is no overtime, period. They work the hours that they want and they actually earn more money. And I've got some stats on that coming up. So the employee advantages, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just to say that just be aware of the time, because we don't have any sessions after this one, so we can carry on a little bit, but just so you're aware, because you have a lot of slides back. Yeah,
I do. Okay.
And I want to talk to you about your presentation because I have some questions also, please.
Okay, well, I'll go through that. So what happens and what I like about it is mid-scale level workers. These people are high school dropouts, possibly, or only a high school education. They may not have had specific training or come in super experienced in other shops, can come in and be certified at certain levels and be able to do the work because the work has been defined so specifically as to what it is that they need to do. And so there's more opportunities for them to do it. So points are based on wages. And in this one example, where there was 5 people who qualify for this in the particular facility, they had a person who was originally getting $12.50 an hour. That was actually fairly high pay. It was almost $4.50 higher than the minimum wage in that community at Louisville, Kentucky. And they changed it when they went to the gamification. This one guy got it. He got up to $35 an hour. He never stopped running. I never saw him standing still, ever. He did everything, and he did really good. He loves that job, and he showed it, and he's making decent money at it. I'm going to say his education skill level never could have gotten to that, to a job that paid that kind of money. So the workflow derived through automation eliminate the bottlenecks of what's there, because again, if there was something that was human controlled, something that a human needed to do, and there are in any automated setup, there's a manual labor that's involved and where the human has to touch it, it can identify where those areas are, and you can then begin to, again, Diego said it, if you have the data, you can determine, is it worth it for me to have 5 people here, or is it something I could automate? You get to make the decision. You don't have to make the decision, but you have to consider it. That's business management. You've reduced labor and increased profits. So the increased gross profit, increased capacity, and if you need to do more, add a shift. I've talked, I'm going to say in the last 3 years to over 500 different printers. That's not an exaggeration. I talked to 200 of them alone in 2019 in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Chicago. Okay. All of them had capacity. Every single one of them. They're small printers in most cases, but there wasn't one that couldn't use more work. So rather than buy equipment, sorry, vendors, but use the capacity of your equipment better. If you're on a click machine, then you're happy, or the vendor is anyway. So what that resulted in, it's actually, my things are covering it up. I don't really care. What that resulted in is gross profit, 5 times gross profit, reduced labor. They didn't have as many people. That particular facility went from 300 people down to, I think it was 55 or 65 at the time. And they actually were able to produce more work in that particular time, handle more orders, and they didn't have to buy any more equipment to do that. So they increased their gross profit by that amount. It's huge. So again, automated workflows are brittle. And that means any changes that you make, what are you going to affect? In a sophisticated technology setup, there's things called services, and that piece, that module within the technology is meant to consume information and send information out to be consumed by another module as to what's there. If you change one of those services for some reason or whatever, there's an upgrade, and you have 5 different vendor, software vendors stuff there, and they've done an upgrade, you have no idea what the effect's going to be on it down the line. So those are things that you have to be aware of. That change is in a very automated setup can be very brittle. Just something simple like adding another paper substrate. Will it go through the folder well? Do you have to create a different workflow and stuff for that? Okay. So basically, this is all about software brittleness. Let me finish in 1 minute that I have left.
Sure.
The upgrade again. Will the upgrades create an issue for it? So the support that you get from the vendors that you might have to pay for, I'm going to disagree with the previous presenter. It's as expensive as it is necessary. You must have that support, and you must price that into your work. So I'll go ahead and leave it at that. We'll let the little graphic up here as to why that's important. Ask your questions, my friend Morten.
My friend Robert, you can talk forever, which is good. the only thing is that fortunately we don't have any other presentations afterwards. So now we can talk for an hour if you like, right? One of the things I can't help think about, and I don't know how much you read some of the articles that I write, but one of the things that I have been paying a lot of interest to in my own writings in the past couple of half year, I would say, is Heidelberg's focus on OEE, right?
Yeah.
And whenever I talk to guys like Anthony Thirlby and to Jacob Hededam Hummel and to Jürgen and to some of the Heidelberg people and talk about these things, I always say that it's kind of funny because if you look at the OEE of a machine, then that's one thing, of course. But if you look at the utilization, which you're talking about, that's a different thing. Because if you only utilize your machine 25%, right? Why is OEE then important? And I think it's important, but I'm just trying to challenge that, because you're totally right that bring in another shift, try to bring your OEE down in order to utilize your machine even more, in order to make it more profitable to own that machine, right?
Yes. What do you want me to say? I mean,
I don't know. I was just confirming what you say, but the thing is that, you know, why do people buy presses? That comes back to the question we had before, because I mean, if you look at the full cost model, is also something that I'm very skeptical towards, right? So if you look at the full cost models that most printers globally use for pricing, at least the cost base of their price, they don't take the utilization into account 100%. They don't use it as a variable. So that means that when they bought the machine, they put in 70%, and that's what they go for. And that means that every time a vendor is presenting a new machine where they can think that, okay, instead of 70%, you can do it on 50%. And they will say, that means that with the same staffing and with everything, I can have 20% more business. And they never see where the business should come from. They just see what they can produce.
Yeah. Okay. That's just, I'm just going to say it. That's bad management, because that's not understanding what your market is.
There is a million printing companies in the world. I will take that it's more than 900,000 that operates this way.
Yeah, if that's for sure. And they're not maximizing it. If they got taken over by a, venture capitalists or something like that, or an investment bankers, something that would be addressed immediately. In terms of that, okay, I've got a story. One of the ad agencies.
I am not surprised.
Yeah, really. One of the ad agencies that we used to work with was bought by, I think it was Omnicom, which is a conglomerate of ad agencies, and they came in, and the financial guys were taking a tour, and we were asked to accompany them on a tour of our facility, because we were a major provider to that agency. In other words, they looked at a number and they said, that number is really big. Why are you giving them money? Well, let's go take a look at it. And they came over, like at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that facility, as we advertised ourselves, was a large format commercial short run sheet fed operation. Okay.
Just to have very large business cards, right?
Yeah, right. Well, we did no business cards. We used a little printer down the street for that. But we did the large stuff. We had big, the man Roland that you saw in the video, and some old Mealy's, huge things. When outdoor was all litho. Anyway, going through all of that, the guy comes in at 10 o'clock in the morning. We generally didn't have any work on the presses until probably around 4 or so, because it was second shift that did the heavy lifting on the actual manufacturing.
But that's because second shift, everybody knows that the second shift is cheaper. You know that, right?
Yeah, and that's part of it. Yeah, we were a union shop, so but still, as they came, well, we had to, because we were the movie studios. So with the movie studios, if you're not union, you don't get the work. But for the most part. But so anyway, these finance guys from Omnicom come walking in there. And their thing was, and we were warned ahead of time, was that they're thinking of buying, a print facility, getting their own presses and stuff, because they can get them so cheap. Okay, printing facility. The finance guy comes walking in, and he's looking at it. And there's 6 presses sitting there, and he looks at it and he goes, well, "Why aren't they running?" And he said, "Oh, well, we don't get our work till around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon." And the guy said, "You mean those machines? How much are they?" "Well, that one's about $6 million. Oh, that one's brand new. That's $8 million," and and so forth. Through the whole thing. And so the upshot of it was, he said, we were told this, that we're not buying any printing presses if they're not running 100% of the time. And they explained to them, we don't know when the work is going to be there. In fact, what they were upset about is that they paid in advance to say, we need to be able to get on the press these 3 days. We don't know which of the 3 days.
Now they just saw that everything was empty. So
that's right. And they thought they were using them all 3 days. And they said, no, once that's approved, it has to go on press. So we said, fine, pay us, thousands of dollars. They'll sit idle waiting for you. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how that world, I think, is gone. except for that very high end I alluded to earlier.
Yeah. But I didn't question that thing. I was just saying that with all business models, it's always like that. I mean, if you look at a disruptor like Skype, for example, and I remember that it was one of the first peer-to-peer services, right? And I think that all the cable providers and the phone companies, they were just like, and now internet comes, it's just another business opportunity. We have the phone bills, we have the cable TVs, we have the internet, so everything is just like skyrocketing until you realize that, okay, with internet comes voice over IP, peer-to-peer, and wow, that business model actually destroyed everything that they came from, right? Yep. And I'm just saying that if you look at the printing business, it's I think that if you look at companies like RentAPress, if you look at Gelato, if you look at Hello Print, if you look at some of the printing companies that don't really own equipment, they are basically utilizing, because of better management, better software, better customer service, better in touch with the market in relation to what kind of service and products they need. And the reason why they can deliver is because they can utilize an overcapacity.
H&H Global just bought Inner Workings, and that was the impetus for them, was to expand their reach into existing customers, and they now brag about the fact that they don't own a press. Well, not Inner Workings used to do that. I haven't dealt with them in a while, but that was the big thing. We don't have this hard expense, and we grind the printers like crazy for that, because we know exactly what their expenses are.
Essentially, yeah. So one of the things that I'm a little curious about, because obviously you know a lot of things. And when I was listening to you in the earlier of your presentation, where you spoke about this different between template, hybrid, manual, imposition kind of things. I was a little bit surprised that you claim that manual imposition is by far the best when it comes to utilization of the sheets. Is that really true?
If somebody's willing to spend the time doing it, yes, because they understand what the cutter can do, and what order that the items should be put in, because they may say, well, geez, this one's got this incredible purple field there. So if I put the gray, the neutral gray card, right after it, there's a chance that there could be a tint that's affected with it. They would know that kind of thing. It's possible to program that in to different presses, but for short run digital, it's just not an issue. And
the reason I was asking is because when Diego, for example, mentioned Telelabs and the Phoenix, I can't help think about that when I saw IMP the first time and when I saw Telelabs the first time, where they are bypassing everything that relates to templates because it's using some kind of artificial intelligence to do so. I actually thought that was where you get, because for example, with the Phoenix and probably also the others, I just assume that they can have all these learning and they can have all these technical things that you put into things. So quality versus price versus even the utilization of a sheet. I thought it was way better when you do AI.
Well, it is AI. If you look at the hybrid and dynamic template, that looks at what orders are available, and that does it all through artificial intelligence. And there's always machine learning built into artificial intelligence. Like if you tell it that this didn't work, fix it, or that if it looks at something and does, there's actually with a photospectrometer in line that can measure the things and measure the jobs at very high speed, and so it will look and see if the color is off. And then it will identify the fact that, gee, the color is off every time we run that purple card in front of that.
So now we learn from it,
and we now learn from it, and it does that kind of stuff. But that, okay, to some people that may sound like, oh my God, I can do that. That's what these guys do. That's why I showed the calculus in the beginning. Is that's how they work with that kind of stuff. They're data scientists that do that. And in the case of Brett's company, he has 4 people with doctorate degrees, several of which have won, awards on the level of programming that they've done to create that. And, and it's not the only company that does it. I mean, it may have been an early adopter and stuff like this, and other people have productized better, but he's got facilities and businesses that can use this. So he's got an intimate level of knowledge that,
I know that. And that's why I always intrigued by Brett, because I mean, he's always got the good ideas and he has printing facilities to test it out on, right? So that is maybe a good combination. Robert, I don't know how old you are. I am 52. I had to think, right? And I say sometimes to my wife that running around trying to be the editor of a media and trying to be relatively on the edge with new technology and understanding also everything like that. Are you and are we getting too old for being the advisors of? I'm not talking to you as a person, because I don't know you well enough for that, but I was thinking that let me turn the clock a little bit, because I just have to put something in between. When we did the program for this week, it is not because we don't want to have the usual suspects around, but we have actually spent some time on trying to find people that are not the usual suspects. Because at some point, you may need to have the next generations of the specialists, because they may have another approach to things. What do you think of that?
I think it's essential. I prefer to work with young people who question what's going on. I think Deborah did a good setup on that. I question things. People question me about it. They want to know why, because I'm pretty adamant about things that I want done, and they'll say why, why, and I have no problem telling them, and they have no problem telling me back, and I encourage them. And there's some people that I've worked with that have been beaten up pretty bad by managers that they've had, and so there's what I'll call under the table talk about what's going on. I crawl under the table and I hear it, and I tell them I want to know exactly what's there, because number one, I know how to say no. Number two, if it can't be done, I know how to say I don't see how that's possible. It doesn't seem feasible. And number three, if you're extremely unhappy where you're working because it's too old-fashioned, go find another job, because you'll be a lot happier. And so there's a lot of factors, but I prefer working with younger people. You're a little old, in my opinion, for me to be working with. Just teasing.
I totally agree.
But the programmers that I have direct access to the developers, to the actual code monkeys, as they would hate to be called, but the guys who do the development and development architects, I know very little about it, and they hate that. But they're also adamant that software can do anything. And so I say, here's what I need done. How can it be done? Not practical, do it this way. Okay, that's not practical, let's do it that way. Whatever the case is, I talk to the people. Their average age of the people that I've been speaking to is under 30. So I don't see a age gap. And I'm older than you, quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. We have one question, and I want that to be answered relatively fast, because I want to ask you one question, which is mine.
Sure.
Before okay. I leave you off the hook. Question from this RRCCC, which is probably not his or her name, but very good presentation, sir. What about the spare parts in 4.0? If we move on fully automation, any error in the process needs mechanical support. How to handle that?
Okay, well, there's first of all, the automation system, and any MIS system did this. And I went back and I looked at MIS system page sites. I looked at EFI like Pace and Printsmith and Print IQ and a variety of these other ones that are there that are pretty good products, that exist as far as that they've been kept up to date and all of this kind of stuff. They all reach into the equipment. They all can get stuff from the equipment, so they can notify people. And they'll, there's no reason why you can't notify your mechatronics group to come out and fix something when it needs to be done, or that it's showing signs that it's going to need maintenance. Again, anticipation and forecasting. That's what it does. And it brings the people into those particular areas so that they're able to, how can I put it? I mean, just, be there when it needs to be done. And that is scheduling. Like if it says, we have 5 Indigos. 2 of them are down for maintenance. Okay. So what does that do to delivery times? Well, maybe you can't print early and ship long. So maybe you're not going to make as much money from that. That hits the financial department too. I mean, this is comprehensive. That's what an MIS does.
And I would say to you, sir, asking the question that actually this week is also about that, because we have on Wednesday we have standard finishing systems from the US talking with Bob Flynn about how Horizon is creating what they call IceLink, which is like their service of IoT, which is among other things used for scheduled maintenance. So you have as little downtime as possible, and that also includes that sometimes more and more vendors are having actually spare parts on site in the printing companies in order to do self-maintenance as well. Also, I can't remember, it's Wednesday or Thursday, we have Baldwin, who you would not typically think of as a company in this area, but they are developing a very, very interesting platform called AMP. And Jake and Steve will give ideas and presentations of also how that cross-vendor can actually be used to do schedule maintenance, plus a lot of other really nifty things in relation to being a way smarter and more efficient printing company. So if you just dig in, and that would be great. Now my question to you, Robert, and that is the last one, I promise you. You mentioned trade shows as part of the learning process. And I know it's a huge question that we can't answer shortly, and we take the time we need, but I'm just a little curious on it, because, from my perspective, I think I wrote about it as well. I think that in these pandemic times where we are looking at like events like this, like Printing Unite last week, and all the events that have been around since the pandemic and the lockdowns, I can't help think about that. The more I think about it, the only thing, there's two reasons why I still want to attend a trade show. One thing is for sure the networking and the social thing that you have together with the friends and people you meet there. I don't think that electronics will cover that for a long time. But the other thing is also that some trade shows are quite good at doing conferences with people from outside the industry, giving you inputs to the industry. What platforms do you see enables that level of, cross-industry education in the future?
What are you talking about? A virtual trade show or an actual trade show?
I'm talking about the actual trade shows, because I'm talking I understand your question. No, I'm talking about that in case the actual trade shows will be, let's say, maybe not as frequently visited as in the past for many reasons. One reason, for example, is that you can sell, now the pandemic has shown that most vendors, they sell the same amount of equipment or the same quantity or the same numbers of money as if there was no pandemic. So they are not depending on Drupas, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that if you don't have to go to Drupa to buy products, you could go there because of the social, the networking, and from the Drupa troop and the learning thing. But that is maybe a little long travel for that part. So I'm just wondering, do you see there's any like virtual replacements for that part of it? Somebody who takes that responsibility on them.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's been proven with the proliferation of webinars that have come up for training purposes. I think it's there, but I also, and I talked about this before, I think for both sales and training, I think going to the manufacturer's, actual site, what I call their lab, where they have things set up where every trick in the book. Well, you were there for the Heidelberg one, the innovation thing. That's why that's golden. I mean, you go there for that, and you're seeing everything they can do and what their original intent is. I want to take that a little bit further. I think that any webinar setup, some are clunky. I think that there needs to be moderation. As you do moderation on these and ask questions and move things along.
I think it's fun.
Yeah, well, it's fun, but even something like the Crown Pub, which is okay. It's a very loosey-goosey, but that it's friendly. It is like a pub. Anybody can jump in the conversation and have opinions and do things like that. But it's not focused on training. So that's really an issue of structure and everyone's agreement that here's how we're structured. This is what you're going to be getting. Only join in if that's just what you're after. but as far as the actual physical training of it and physical seeing the sites, I think the manufacturers can bring people in. Where I see the trade shows being of value, where there's education to it, is them talking about why they developed a particular technology. In other words, okay, we made this print with a double hit of black. Okay, now why do you need a double hit of black? Oh, well, we can do it. Well, why do you need it? Well, we can do it. Well, the issue is that for some reason they said we're going to go spend $1 million with an R&D so we can do a double hit of black, because we went out and we researched all these different graphic designers and ad agencies and companies that do the focus studies of social or the human response to a double black hit, and they found double black, people really pay attention. Instead of looking at something for 6 seconds, they look at it for 12 seconds, and they retain the information that's there. Of course, I'm making all the double black stuff up, but the issue is there's data that they have developed through research that says we need to spend money to have that so that people can have it. That's what they need to talk to people about. They need to go in and say, we talked to this market, and this is why they want it, because they get that usage. Then you're giving the salespeople of those print companies gold to say, I can go to this market. I know those people. I'm going to go and tell them about that. Look at this research. We can produce this in our facility. You're going to be giving your clients at that ad agency so much better product that they're going to sell more products. They're going to hire you to do more campaigns, and you're going to just be sending tons of work to us. Now that's a salesman's gold.
Yeah. So the missing link is how to create enough value for having an added sale so we can grow the industry.
How do you have enough value in the technology that we're asking you to buy? And here's why we think that's the case. Make a case for it. Make a case for it that made you go out and spend money to develop this technology.
Let that be the last word of today. Thank you, Robert Godwin from Chile. That was not Chile Publishing, but Chile, the country.
Right.
and thank you for your time. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
It's always a lot of fun with you, Morten. It really is.
Okay, great. Let's turn off the cameras. Let's play some little sponsor things here, and then we are off. And for everybody, we are back 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And I forgot what the first session is, but it's probably very good. I promise you. Okay, see you.